Dr. Jeremy Weiss here. I'm founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders like the founders of P90X, Baby Einstein, Atari, many more, and how they overcome big challenges in life and business. And this is part of the e-commerce mastery series where top sellers and experts teach you what really works to boost your e-commerce business. And I'm excited. Today we have Richard Baccus, and he runs ABC Vacuum Warehouse and Gruene Steam with his dad, Ralph. How old's your dad now?
My dad is 72.
72. ABC Vacuum started in 1977 as a mail order vacuum business, and they operate a brick-and-mortar store as well as a 20,000 square foot warehouse and employ 28 staff. And Gruene Steam, they've run since 2008, and it provides alternatives to harsh chemical cleaning products because after decades of experience in the retail floor business, they knew there was a better way, and they used German innovations to actually come up with the steam products to clean floors. So we'll talk about that too. Richard, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, great to be here.
This is exciting, and I always like to include a fun fact about someone, so it kind of makes it personal. And you have probably one of the most interesting fun facts is what about you?
I'm an avid roller skater.
Roller skater. And what happened recently because of your roller skating escapades?
Yeah, so I was getting into it pretty well, and we were also doing some light derby stuff, roller derby stuff, and I broke my upper femur.
Wow.
After being taken out by another competitor. So
is the goal of the roller derby to get is it to get around as many times as possible? What is the goal?
It is. So you've got a person who is trying to lap the other team and get through their defenses, and that's how you score. So, but sometimes it's not about that. Sometimes it's about also just kind of like exacting a little revenge sometimes.
So what happened when you broke your femur? And that's serious.
Yeah, so what happened was it was actually kind of a freak thing. Both of my skates got taken out. So the guy actually fell. He was coming in to hit me, but he actually tried to slide and he fell. Both skates kicked up. I did upended, came down on top of his skate, and it kind of cracked my legs.
Oh, my gosh.
But,
how painful is that?
You go into shock. You don't even think about it. So
Really?
I got carted out. As far as I can remember, I think I'm the only person that ever got carted out completely with something like that. But we went through like a 16-week recovery process, and I'm back out there now.
Yeah. So you employ these intensity with the e-commerce business too, right?
Well, yeah, I'm competitive, but that's more of a steam. That's more of a release kind of thing. A safety valve to get rid of stress and things like that.
So I want to hear about the beginnings and the transitions of ABC Vacuum. But first, I want to talk about you had a lot of big influences growing up. Obviously your dad was a big influence. What did you learn from him when you were growing up?
Well, growing up, he actually, I was fairly young when we started the company, so I remember all the little things from, painting the walls, clearing the stuff out, always doing work, that type of thing. I was one of these few kids that had money when, he'd pay me a little bit for doing things. Well, I always had money, so hard work was always just a given component. We just never even thought about that. But at the same time, my father was always very willing to try new things. Mm-hmm. Somebody he'd say, you fail 5 times for that one thing that's going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So always innovating any little way he could. If there was a way that everybody's selling something a certain way, let's try it just a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I just grew up with that, so it was just kind of instilled in me.
What did you see him trying that sticks out to you?
One thing in particular was in front of our vacuum store. He saw the sign. I don't know where he saw it or how he got connected with it, but it was basically a mechanical gorilla. So it was like a full-size gorilla sitting there. And I remember thinking, like, why would you put a gorilla in front of the store? And as soon as he did it, though, it was obvious because every car going by would honk. So here's this little tiny store with really no signage, but there was a grill out front. And
was this on the outside of the store or the inside window?
It was on the outside of the store by the street.
Oh, wow.
Because he checked with the local signage, and they didn't really have a way to say there was nothing in there saying you can't put a mechanical gorilla out there.
They didn't have a law yet until they just made one after your dad did that.
Right. Exactly. So This was a big attention getter. Well, next thing you know, everybody'd come in with a smile on their face. They'd make a comment about it.
Yeah.
They'd bring their kids by, that type of thing. So I remember thinking like, wow, that was really smart to do that, even though that was just kind of outside the box, thinking like, how can I draw attention to this little store, and get more
Right.
traffic in there?
How do you think he thought of that? What gave him the idea for a mechanical gorilla?
I don't know. I mean, too many vodka tonics, maybe. I don't know, but he was always thinking like that. Let's just try something different. Let's try something new.
Where was the first store?
First store was in Burnett Road in Austin here,
Okay.
and it was a converted bait shack, like where these places where you go to buy bait to go
Sure,
fishing or
sure.
something like that. It was very small, 800 square feet, and if we had to work on things in front of the customer. So if we had to do repairs or anything like that, the customers were standing right next to us. So
Right.
very cramped space. But he really worked hard to move out of that, and we moved to a larger place down the street. And that's where we really started to do all of our mail order operations, and all that kind of stuff really started to flow, because we were doing as much out the back door as we were the front door always.
So why vacuums?
Vacuums. He got involved selling. He was working with Hoover and then Eureka as a sales rep. And so one thing, he just started making contacts, connections. Actually started selling these vacuums called Rainbows and Kirby's that were sold door to door at the time.
Right.
Well, he knew the guys selling them, and they would occasionally say, "Hey, would you mind buying a few of these off of me so I can make a sales quota?" And so he thought, "Yeah, but what am I going to do with them?" And then he thought, "You know what I'll do? I'll take out a classified ad and sell it." That would be the equivalent of today of like putting something on Craigslist, let's say.
Right. Right.
And so he did that, and I remember seeing him do that all the time, and going, I'd ride with him to go get these things from the guys, and that was basically the old internet.
So what did he do? He would find, was there specific magazines that he found worked, or what?
Yeah, he started advertising. He started trying different magazines with these little small classified ads. He'd do local as well, but started doing national ones. And when he started doing the national ones, the demand went up. So that's when he started learning things about email lists, or I'm sorry, not email lists, but actual mail lists at the
Right.
time, and how to organize those, categorize those, hit them periodically,
Yeah.
change your offers up, A/B test them.
Do you still do ads in magazines?
We don't. No.
Oh,
we don't
okay.
do that.
I was just asking so you can share some of the details, because you don't want to get competitors out there. But since you aren't doing it anymore,
No,
what
no.
were what did the ads say? Because it obviously drew response.
Yeah. So the
And
ads
would
basically,
he write them also, or would he hire someone?
No, he would write them himself,
Yeah.
and he'd put them in. They would basically just be a small ad saying, you can get this. There's some. He'd have some kind of like urgent or seasonal lead in,
Yeah.
and then it would just give the price,
Yeah.
and then where to do the inquiry to. And these inquiries would come in by mail. We'd save their addresses, sort them, and keep them, and then we would hit them periodically with better offers, A/B test them, like I said. And what was so great back then was when people would order them, you get these checks in the mail.
Right.
So every day you come and hit the mail and see their inquiries or it's money. And so
What was the offer? Like you said, like could people, was offered to buy one, or for like what would they inquire about?
Yeah, so what it would be would
Do you remember the ad? Like I'm curious of what exactly it said, like what the headline
Okay,
said,
well-
because it obviously pulled, response.
some of them were a little more creative than others,
Yeah.
but one of them was so you got to remember that like a Kirby vacuum was probably about at that time $800 new,
Right.
and so he would advertise this for say $400, and it would say divorced, need to sell brand new Kirby. No one even questioned that if you say divorce. So they would instantly send us in and inquire about it. But because it was kind of cute, people would get, okay, this is a business or whatnot. That's fine.
Right.
So they would usually get a chuckle out of it. But you'd see that word divorced, in all bold black, and it would just attract your eyes, and you're like, I need to know more about. Oh wow, that's a great price on that vacuum cleaner.
Right.
So that would be an example of one way he was doing it to kind of like lead generate or
Yeah.
get a sale direct, right there.
So the offer was, it would say the price. Like what would an inquiry letter that you would get look like?
Well, an inquiry letter would just be like, we're needing some more information on this. All your
Oh,
classified
I
ad,
got
that
you.
kind of thing.
They weren't like ready to buy, but they were like wanting to know more information.
That's right. And then we would send them a brochure out. We'd send them some information on it, which gives them a little bit more about it. But then we got them on the list. And so, we'd hit them once a quarter with a new offer if they didn't buy.
Was there a number on there, or did people just send in letters at the time?
Well, it was mail-in at first. Now, once we expanded our operation, we got an 800 number. And so then they could call in direct. And so doing everything and fulfillment that way, originally, this is also funny. Yeah. My grandparents did the shipping. So
really,
these orders would come in, and then my grandmother would take them and go and ship them out the back. Now, by 1985 or 86, we'd actually a little more of an operation where we had a shipper and everything like that. So,
yeah. So what other headlines worked? I'm a direct response junkie. I love hearing this stuff. So the divorced worked. What other creative headlines did he come up with?
Things like arrested. There was
so what? How did he tie arrested?
Robbery was one. Don't be robbed. That kind of thing.
Because
just
the
anything
price
to stand
so
out from just the sea of stuff that was in there.
Because it was so cheap. That's how he used that.
Divorce was the best one, though.
Divorce was the best one. So what magazines did he target? How did he know which magazines? Because there's a million magazines out there.
Yeah, he tried a lot of different ones. Southern Living. There was one called Progressive Farmer. Some of these were fairly targeted, but also there was a while there where People magazine would have, we got more on a national level. They did have classifieds in the back, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. And so did you ever end up buying lists since you found that these lists worked well?
No. This solely generated on our own, and he would go through, like I said, and just treated them like gold. So the way, if you have a really good email list today, it's the same way. You do it the exact same way.
Yeah. So what would you do now? You compiled the list of potential buyers. What would you do? What would you send out in the future once you had that list?
Yeah, so if they did an initial inquiry, we would send them out a seasonal thing, say, everything from, again, something to kind of get their attention, notice potential price increase coming. This is something you can get in on right now, that type of thing. Then once we had them, once they purchased, we'd put them on a yearly basis, then update, so that in case they had somebody they knew or something like that, referral discount, and give them that, here's a price for this if there's somebody, So we never, ever got rid of the entire list. Once you were on the list, you'd get something at least once a year. Mm-hmm. But until you bought, you'd get hit once a quarter.
Yeah. So at what point did you stop doing the magazine ads?
Yeah, so really what happened is in 1995, that went on for a good 10 years.
Yeah, that's a long time.
And we were definitely the largest independent vacuum mail order. There was no doubt about that at the time. But this thing called the internet came along. And I remember my father, I was actually working at Papa John's Pizza at the time. So I'd gone off, got my degree. I'm doing marketing and all this other stuff for them, opening up in areas. And he called me and said, I went to this webinar or the seminar about getting on the web. I was like, what? Why are you going to do that? That's for books or information, And I said, we're having to do this online ordering thing. It's a pain. You wouldn't believe it, And he's like,
because you knew from Papa John's.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Oh, and it was a nightmare because John Schneider, the owner of Papa John's at the time and CEO, he had this vision that this was going to be the way people were going to order pizza. Well, we were on 14K modems back then. It just was not working out. And it was so slow, and people ended up calling us anyway, and we could just take their orders so easily over the phone. We were set up for that. And then these orders would pop in operationally, and people didn't know what to do with them. And it was always a mess. But he was adamant about it. Yeah. Like, this is going to work. Make it work. Make it work. Make it work. Mm. So, I worked a lot with the IT department on that. So I got very close with them.
Yeah.
And we would constantly be trying to figure out how to get this in operation. So my job was trying to figure out how to make it work in operationally. Well, along the way, I learned how to do some things like build shopping carts. I learned how to build, presentation areas with photos and things like that.
And this is what year? What year is this about?
That's 95 to 96.
95, yeah. So this is pre-Google, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is back when Yahoo ruled.
Yeah. That's wild. Yeah, so go on. Yeah.
So anyway, once he got the website, we basically put our catalog on the web, and all I had was a phone number and price listings and everything else because we were selling more than just the Kirby's at that point. We were selling a wide array of
Yeah.
vacuum cleaners, and well, once that happened, the phone started to ring nonstop. So
Really?
we were one of two people selling vacuum cleaners online, and
That's crazy, right?
he contacted me at Papa John's and then was like, "You got to come work for me." I was like, "I'm never going to work for you, Dad. Forget it. It's not going to
Like
happen."
I remember painting stuff and you gave me 2 cents.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I was like, it's just he's like, "Oh, come on, I don't know, because this web stuff, it's getting away from me. I don't know what I'm doing." And so I was like, "All right, I said, I'll tell you what, I got a sabbatical coming up. I'll work on it a little bit. We'll check it out." So the first thing I did is I said, "You got to get a shopping cart in here. You got to get some better photos." It's like, "Can you do all that?" I was like, "All right, I'll do it." And once that happened,
Yeah.
the phone got even worse. Operations were breaking. They couldn't handle the operations. So I spent my last weeks of my sabbatical there fixing operational stuff and getting shipping, all that. They didn't have a network in place. I had to put in a computer network for them.
I mean, who had one then? Hardly anyone. Like Yahoo had one, right? I mean,
Right. People just weren't used to doing local area networks or having
yeah,
them set up for being web enabled or anything
yeah.
like that. I mean, all of our UPS tracking and everything was still done on hand tickets. I mean,
Wow.
there was no uploading and all the downloading, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So literally had to create everything e-commerce wise. I had a little bit of a head start coming from where I was coming from and having such a leader that was so crazy about making that work.
Right.
So the translation was actually pretty seamless when we
Yeah.
switched from catalog over to internet because operationally I already knew what to do. We already had that stuff in place. I just had to upgrade it, computerize it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Richard, I want to hear about some of the lessons at Papa John's, but first I have to go back. So early on, like when your dad asked you that, you said, "No way, I'm working for you."
Hmm.
What did you want to be when you grew up? Because obviously your dad has been in this business for a long time.
Yeah, I knew I wanted to be in business, but I wasn't quite sure where. And my path just took me into Papa John's very quickly because this I was trying to pay back my student loans, and I started delivering pizza, and I saw this Papa John's open up. Well, it turned out to be the very first one in Texas.
Wow.
It was being overseen by the VP of the company. So I got to work initially right there next
Yeah.
to him, and he saw that I was interested in more than just delivering pizzas.
Right.
So I kind of got fast tracked,
Wow.
and on a lot of fronts, it was kind of a whirlwind few years there.
It's like luck, timing, and hard work all kind of came together because,
Everything,
yeah,
yeah.
if the VP wasn't there, you wouldn't have met him, you know?
Wouldn't have met him, and so he knew me, and so there was always this kind of a contact that I had there.
Right.
So I always stayed a little bit outside just the normal operations, always attending new store openings, working with franchisees. Uh, you know, since I did the initial marketing, working with marketing plans.
Yeah.
So there was always these little things there that was always working in Louisville directly with the corporate as well.
Mm. So what worked with opening these new franchises
You mean like how
in
did
the
it?
pizza places? Yeah, because you'd have to be, kind of coordinating the marketing, right, for these new businesses.
Yes. So basically, you'd have to go in. You'd have to have a very strong marketing plan, a lot of local direct stuff,
Like what?
and
What does that
like
mean?
like hanging door hangers on people's doors,
Mm.
things like that. Just making sure that there was mail pieces, um, all that kind of thing. There was even some telemarketing, a
Yeah.
little bit of that.
So a lot of grassroots, like local stuff, making people aware.
Oh yeah, big time, big time. And then the other component with that was when they order, you want to make sure that they were getting the best experience possible. So making sure that everybody was trained properly, the product was perfect. So that was another thing. So I had all this experience in training and getting these people, the entire staff up to speed. So much I even ran their corporate store in Austin, where everyone would come visit to see a model store.
Mm.
So we would
No pressure there.
no pressure there, but I handled that. That part was actually easy because it wasn't a real busy store. So,
So then, what did you do? What were your responsibilities when you got to corporate?
like I said, it was mostly that. So
Hmm.
it was always split between training, marketing, and actual operations. So when you kind of get pegged for a new store opening, they want you to always do that.
Yeah,
That's
I
something
see.
they always because
It's
they
got to
want
be
things
one
to
of
go
the
well.
toughest positions, actually. It's like the other stuff's running smoothly, and then the new store, you have to really jumpstart everything.
You do, and then you also before you want to make sure everything's humming before you hand it to somebody. So then those guys come in and every once in a while you got to go back, and fix everything, make sure everything is going good again. But the one of the things, like I said, right before I left there was this online ordering.
Yeah.
People were really upset about it. It just wasn't working,
They were trying
and
to do it and it just wasn't functioning. Is that why?
didn't
I
function
mean,
well.
how many people are really online? I'm surprised that it was working so well because I think at that time most people aren't even online.
Well, there was quite a few people online, but
Yeah.
again, it was slow internet speeds.
Yeah.
We're talking 30, 40 seconds to download a photo, that type of thing, and that's if everything's working good.
Now we would throw our computer against the wall if it took like
Oh,
that
you,
amount of
you were
time.
lucky to get through an order placement and not get kicked off the internet 3 or 4 times while you were doing it.
Right.
Just getting kicked off all the time. But there were people that were trying to be online. I mean, that's when AOL was big, and I think so people were kind of getting into that and messaging and stuff like that. But actually trying to get through an order process, this is what e-commerce was not really viable at the time.
Right.
So I remember even me, I had a really good connection, but it was still a dial-up. You had to like dial it up, wait for the protocols to exchange, all
Right. It
that
was like,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
But it was that's the problem. So imagine in the middle of a dinner rush, people are calling, the phones are smoking, everybody's banging out pizzas and they're trying to get them out. The drivers are all trying to figure out where they're going, and all of a sudden here's this order that just pops in and it's all messed up. And they're like, oh, we got to call that customer. Is there a phone number? No, we have an email. Oh, we got to do this whole thing back and forth. And then, and then they call up anyway going, yeah, I don't think I added my drinks to that order. Like, which one was? We don't know. It's not really in our system correctly, and we have to go figure it out. So it was always an operational problem. People hated it, so just a couple of orders a night could really screw up things. And so it was a lot of challenges. And just when you'd go on there, it might take you 15 minutes to place the order because the menus were so slow and they weren't really
Right.
standardized at the time. People didn't really know how to make menus at the time. So, but just operating from that standpoint, always having to have input into it and give feedback, and then work with these guys, these programmers, on how that's supposed to happen,
Yeah.
and doing some of it myself. Uh, I actually got used to working in a space where there wasn't really a model. So we're trying to do something.
Right.
There's no standardized way of doing it. We're kind of making it up as we go. Kind of put me in a different mindset for how to approach these things.
So what is your mindset for approaching these things?
It's always thinking outside the box, and my mindset's always coming from the perspective of the user, the person who's actually doing it.
Right. Right.
So how does that make it easier for them? What are they looking for? What are they thinking? What's going through their mind? Where are their eyes going? What are they following?
Mm-hmm.
Does this color make a difference to them or not? That type of thing.
Right.
Uh, because literally, back then there was no standardized way of doing it, so you had to come up with
Yeah.
something.
So what lessons you learned from John at Papa John's? It seemed like he knew this should be the way, and it sounds like a visionary in a lot of respects.
Yeah, so one thing about him was he was also fiercely competitive. One of the things he liked to do when he would come visit us was he liked to go play laser tag. Now, this guy was serious about laser tag, let me tell you. He had the full hood suit. He had the black tights, all this kind of stuff. He wanted to be as invisible as he could be, and he was not afraid to go around and take everybody out. And he did not take offense. A lot of people thought, "Oh, should I actually try to kill him?" Like, no, try to kill him. It's hard to kill. Let me tell you. So he had a real competitive nature, no matter what he did. But he also was also very much looking into the future. So
Yeah.
he was very adamant about things like ingredients and how they were made, and almost obsessive. And the board didn't like that. A lot of people didn't like that. So, two things I learned about him is it's not afraid to be an innovator and have arrows on your back because you're gonna get them. If you do something new or different and you have any success at it,
Yeah.
they're coming for you.
Yeah.
So just get ready for that. That's actually your sign that you're doing it right. So if you're not, we used to have this saying that if we're not pissing somebody off, we're not doing the right thing. So as long as you're keeping headstrong about it and you can see it and you know it's what you want to do, it may not always be right, but that's how you get things done, and that's how you do new things.
What did you think he saw about the internet at that point where he was so adamant, even though everything was breaking and was actually causing more issues in the stores?
Sorry, I didn't get that last part.
Oh, I said, what do you think he saw about the internet that made him so adamant to do it, even though it was breaking more things and causing more of a slowdown in the stores?
This is something he probably will never get true credit for because they'll just think of him as the pizza guy, but he did see that as a modern way of communication. So um, he just actually had that vision where he saw this is the way people are going to be doing it, and
Yeah,
actually now that is the way everybody does it.
yeah,
I mean, everyone orders online. I mean, they pull out their phone,
yeah.
hit that, here comes the pizza. I mean,
It
so
was interesting because when your dad told you, you were in the middle of all of it, and you still said, "Don't do it. It's horrible."
yeah,
You still didn't see the vision, even though you were in it.
I still didn't at that moment.
Yeah.
Now,
So what did your dad? Yeah. So I'm curious because you saw so many issues with it,
mhm.
at the time. And so when your dad told you we want to do this thing, what did he ask you to do? Was it just to put up a website, or did he want to actually do e-commerce?
He told me he was going to put up a website.
Okay.
Like, I'm doing this. What's your opinion of all this? Kind of
Right.
thing. And I basically told him, it's like, we can barely get people to order, buy a pizza on the web, much less I can't imagine them buying a vacuum cleaner or something like that.
Right.
And so,
Which is pretty logical. Yeah.
yeah, I was just being realistic with him at the time. And then, but when these things started to sell, I started to get it, and then I started to see where this thing was going,
Yeah.
and it became very clear to me that there was a whole new way of buying things coming up,
Yeah.
and doing it online, it was going to be much more than chat rooms or looking up information or that kind of stuff. Trying to download, we knew Amazon was selling books at the time, but that was about it. So as far as people actually buying things, because of our background in mail order, it's like this light bulb went off with me, and I went, no, mail order is a big thing. The internet is mail order. So as people are looking around, this is a new way to present things to people.
Right.
It's the same kind of not coming from a mail order background that John Schnatter saw with the online ordering. He was seeing it as just basically a new way for people to communicate. So he wanted to make sure they were able to do it. He actually experimented with faxing before that.
Mm.
So where people would
What did you
fax
do?
orders.
Yeah. Oh, you'd fax
Yes.
it?
So we'd have these fax orders that would come in just because if people wanted to do a fax, they could do that. So they'd have a little sheet they just fill out. But what I was seeing is that people could do the same things with vacuum cleaners. So what we wanted to do was solve a problem. One of the problems was we noticed people would go online to do research. So instantly, I saw that what we needed to have was some type of medium for them to do research. So we actually had this little this thing we started called "Help Me Select a Vacuum," which was basically a questionnaire that you would walk through somebody on a sales floor. So if somebody was on a sales floor, there's questions you ask them to get a feel for what they're needing.
Right.
I just put them online and let people answer them. It was amazing how many people would fill this out and send this in, telling you, I've got pets, I've got kids, I've got stairs, I've got, they tell you all this stuff. Well, we'd have enough information that we'd send them some suggestions back so they'd narrow their search. They're not just out there looking at every item.
Right. Right.
We had a 50% conversion rate on that form.
54%.
50%.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was incredible. We'd give them 2 or 3 suggestions. They would buy one of those every
Wow.
2 emails that we'd get.
So anyone who doesn't have one of these things walking people through should?
Well, this was the
Whatever
first.
product it is?
This is one of the early forms of social proof.
Yeah.
So social proof is basically now we rely on reviews. We relied on things like Consumer Reports to narrow our selections down. How do we get the seeing 500 products down to the 2 that I want to consider?
Right.
And so what we did was we just helped narrow that. We just did a fast track through filters. We did a fast track by just answering them directly.
Yeah.
And so that's why it was so successful. Well, from that, I knew how we needed to develop our website and everything else.
Yeah. So how did your dad convince you to come work with him? Because you have a good job at Papa John's, and he's like, we're swamped. But that still could be like, Dad, just hire someone to do this. What made you decide to actually make the leap and work with him?
Well, what he said was, if you will come on board, I'll just give this to you.
Give what?
The internet side of the business to you.
Oh, wow, okay.
which he didn't at the time.
It's like read the fine print.
Right,
You
read the
know what
fine
I'm
print
saying?
because once it got going, he's like, "Oh, I never said that." But no, we've had a great working relationship. You know,
Yeah.
early on it was a little more like American Chopper. I don't know if you remember that series on Discovery,
I didn't
but
watch it.
yeah, it was a father son thing, and like we would fight and we'd fight in front of the employees and all this because I think we should do this. Oh, you're not doing that. No, forget it. You know that kind of thing. And
Scare
but
everyone. Yeah.
but as things kind of evened out, you know, there was a mutual respect there. One, I respected his conservatism, you know, for building a company, you know, making sure I didn't get too crazy or we just started spending, you know, on crazy things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he respected my vision and where I saw things were going and the risk that we needed to take at times. And since he had a little bit of that in him anyway, we really worked well together as a collaboration. So we're probably one of those rare family teams that actually really works well together.
So what was something big that you fought about at the time?
I remember we fought over a Google AdWords bill that came in. It was $40,000
Okay.
a month.
Was he gonna
And
strangle you, or what happened there?
well, what it was there was this little company called Dyson that just started,
Right.
and the ROI
They
on
really
this
just started. Dyson had just started at the time.
they had just started,
Oh wow.
and we were on the ground floor with them, so we had their products, and I thought, you know, I'll throw them in Google AdWords and we'll see what happens. Well, the problem was that people were curious about them, not ready to buy. They just wanted to know what was up with this Dyson name,
Mm.
and so they were hitting the clicks for research, and they
Mm.
weren't converting. And this went insane. So I had a wide budget, but my wide budget was based on ROI. So that month we didn't have a return on investment. And it was like $40,000. We had a big fight about that, like what to do about it. And I was like, this just tells me that we need to get more involved in Dyson. This means we need to go headfirst into them. And he fought about that. He's like, yeah, but then nobody's buying the things. They're just like, you know, wasting all this money. And you know, so we were going back and forth about it. Well, now it turns out I was right. So
So then, what do you do with that information? So now you go, we have to get more into Dyson. So what do you actually do?
So what I did was we started a stronger relationship with them, started buying more of their product, then started experimenting through channels like eBay, that type of thing. We experimented with refurbished product.
Mm-hmm.
Refurbished product did really well. So we went that direction a little bit more. And I made a proposal. I sent it to James Dyson for us to be the exclusive eBay dealer for Dyson. And it was firmly rejected.
I was gonna say, how'd you pull that off? Yeah.
Well, you know, you always throw something out there. It's words, right? So we tried it, but the thing is, it got in the ear of the management down the chain. So as they started to have problems with eBay, rogue sellers, things like that, not really sure what to do with it, they kept calling me back. You know, and going, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Can we do this? Can we do that? So as they're evolving, going through phases, we were started to help shape that a little bit. And I remember we had a little falling out at one point, and I was like, okay, we're not selling Dyson anymore. Forget it. I'm tired of messing with those guys. And rep called me back, and he's like, look, can you do this? Just put your stuff up for a month and sell it any way you want to. I'm not going to restrict you at all. Just sell it any way you want to. I went, no, I said, I'm already geared down for that. I don't want to do it. Why would I want to do it for a month if I can't, you know, keep it?
Right.
So 2 weeks into that, he calls me back. He says, hey, are you going to do this or not? I'm really telling you, you need to do this. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. I said, all right. My father comes in, like, hey, that guy keeps bugging me. Will you just do that? So I was like, all right. So I put everything up. I start selling everything, sell everything for 2 weeks, and then take it all down. Guy calls me up and said, how would you like to be the exclusive Dyson dealer? I go, you mean what I've been asking for the last 2 years? And he goes, yeah, we can do it. I was like, why the change of heart? And he said, this last sale, he goes, you spent 2 weeks selling, and I didn't tell you, but I had 5 other guys selling against you. And I was like, oh, really? I don't know. I just did my own thing. And he said, yeah, well, you outsold all them 4-1.
Wow.
And he goes, you were only doing it for 2 weeks. They did it for the full month. And I went, oh, okay. He goes, I got it passed, no problem now. So, so we became.
So
their
what'd you
exclusive.
do that outsold them so much?
Well, I had a few different sales techniques that I did back then. I just allowed whatever they'd allow us to do. And specifically what I did was I was running auctions, and I would run them staggered. And at the end, I would have a buy it now with multiple quantities into it. So as the auction would end, the people that didn't win the auction could just slide it to buy it now and pick it up. And I would do that on 3, 6, and 9, and I'd run multiple listings. Now, if I had a lot of competition coming in, I would just increase my listings so that we would slowly start to kind of drown them out. We would appear to be the most dominant seller, and then also made sure that our seller ratings were impeccable. So we bent over backwards for customer issues, that type of thing. So if
Right.
you saw those great ratings from us, and then we're kind of dominating the listings, it was a no-brainer. So they jump in an auction. We draw them in with an auction, and then throw them to the buy it now. Now everything is different. It's mostly buy it now, but
Yeah.
back then we leveraged the power of the auction, which the other guys weren't doing. They just had listings up. They weren't trying techniques. They weren't trying to make their listings better, make them stand out.
Yeah.
That's the thing else I would do too. Is I would utilize the promotional tools that eBay would give us, whether it was a bold listing or anything like that. I'd always A/B test those all the time
Right.
to see what worked better for what products. And on the particular products that they allowed me to sell, I already knew. I knew what promotional vehicles were going to work best. So
Yeah. That's amazing. So was it the Dyson thing? Were they just limiting you too much? Is that what kind of you were kind of fed up with playing like within a certain rule set?
well, they had usually refurbished product doesn't have minimum advertised pricing. They decided to experiment with minimum advertised pricing,
Okay.
and I already told them it was going to be a failure,
Right.
and then it turned out it was a failure.
Yeah.
So while they did that, I was just tired of them trying to figure their own way out,
Yeah.
and so we just pulled off, and I was like, I'll
Yeah.
concentrate on other places.
Yeah. Because
So
why wouldn't they just have okay? Why not just have you and everyone else selling on eBay? Just say okay. Like, why did they make you the exclusive dealer? Yeah, you outsold them, but they still probably got some sales from the other people.
yeah, so us being an approved dealer made it so that we actually could do extra warranty for the buyer. We could actually have more buyer protection for them approved by Dyson by saying we're the exclusive approved dealer for them
Right. Right.
on eBay.
Yeah.
So the other thing that we did is we had access to their actual copyrighted material. So you'd see the actual Dyson
Yeah.
material. People who didn't have that, their listings could be taken down,
Yeah.
or they had to like just take some photo from something in an aisle in a store somewhere, so it wouldn't look as professional. So if they did buy from somebody else, they would know that their warranties weren't covered. Um, this was not approved by Dyson. That we were the guys who were already vetted by them.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about some of the transitions. So you talked about the physical store to the mail order and magazines, and then now to website. What was one of the big milestones? So your dad brought you on, and then the website was doing amazing, right? So what were some of the big milestones initially when you first had put up the website?
When we first put it up, I did two things that we probably started to see 5 to 6 times ROI. Was I got rid of this really slow graphic that was on the front page. The web designers had put this really slow loading graphic, which was also an image map for navigation. So you couldn't go into the website until this thing downloaded.
Yeah.
It took about 45 seconds.
Yeah.
I removed that.
You
and
always
then
look at the user experience, it seems like.
always the user
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
So I removed that and got it to where there was actually it was simple. I put an enter button at the bottom that was graphical or textual. So while you're waiting for this download, you had this enter button just saying enter. Well, no one waited for that anymore. I was watching the analytics. Once I put that in, people were in within 3 seconds. So now they're in, navigating, looking.
Mm.
And the next thing was adding photos, which that was shown early on that the more photos that you have of a product, the more engaged people get,
Yeah.
more comfortable they feel about it. And we just didn't have high res back then. We had to go with low res, but still we had photos. And then once we got the shopping cart installed,
What
was
did people use for shopping cart? I mean, did you do something custom, or was there something off the shelf that you could use at the time?
I found a really smart guy here in Austin. He had to build it for me, and
Yeah.
he built it from scratch. And over the course of about 3 to 4 years, you would see programming notes in the code from about 4 or 5 different people, because it took multiple people to construct a shopping cart that would work. We weren't worried about security back then even. It was just, can it work right? It was actually pulling from the database and getting in there. They were very rudimentary at first, like just drop-down menus that would show, pick your product as drop-down menu and stick it in there kind of
Yeah.
thing. So getting to the point where we actually had a button on the product was a big deal.
Yeah. So what do you use today for the shopping cart and
I use BigCommerce. It's a full-blown package. They've already standardized everything. I don't have to worry about anything.
why big commerce as opposed to any of the other? other ones?
The two that I recommend are BigCommerce and Shopify,
Yeah.
and the reason being is they've got so much built into the back end, also for the multi-channel seller. So if you want to sell on eBay or something like that, it's kind of seamless. Now they'll get your products on there. Now it's up to you to promote them differently or work on your listings, but if it just makes it so that it's so much easier. If you want to do any type of chat programs, it's an app you put in now.
Right.
It's ready to go. You just
Right.
throw it on. If you want to get involved in affiliate marketing, it's an app, and then you fill out your information, and you're going in like a day.
Right.
So they take care of that complicated back end. We were with Magento for a while. You
Yeah.
still have to have a full-time developer.
Yeah.
It's not cheap. It's very expensive. Things don't work right. They're buggy, all that kind of stuff. You go with somebody like Shopify or BigCommerce,
Yeah.
you're selling instantly, and they have a consistent consumer experience that's standardized now that people expect. So, it's a very simple checkout. If you don't like that, you want a one-page checkout, it's like $1,000. Now you permanently have a one-page checkout.
Yeah.
So great way to go. That was not a hard decision to make.
Well, how do you the Shopify and BigCommerce is a big debate. How do you decide between the two of those?
I'd say if you're heavy in Amazon, go Shopify. If you're heavy everywhere else, go with BigCommerce.
Just because the multi-channel it seems to be better, or?
Yeah, BigCommerce integrates really well with multiple people out there. They've partnered with a ton of people. So no matter what you're using out there, if you're using also multi-channel platform management systems like Channel Advisor or anything like that, BigCommerce plugs right in. There's a lot of flexibility with them, but their stuff is so clean. I mean, you don't have bugginess. You don't worry about all that stuff. You just worry about selling, marketing, and your level of expense that you want to do on that.
Yeah. So, Richard, what other software do you recommend and use? So you use BigCommerce. What else is helpful for you to run your business?
Yeah, so since we do multi-channels right now, we sell through 16 different channels. So I would say that we were reluctant with Channel Advisor, but they're very difficult to get set up. They're very expensive.
Yeah.
But if you're doing that many channels, you sort of have to have them. I mean, to do a custom platform would cost an enormous amount. You're looking at the $300,000-$400,000 range. But Channel Advisor is still pretty expensive. But if you're doing that, that's where you got to be. So we use them. We also use an in-house mail order manager system. We just use QuickBooks Enterprise. We're real simple and all that kind of stuff. It works pretty well. I do have an integration person that helps us pull everything together.
Yeah.
But as far as software goes, those are some of my picks. Then I've got some other little ones that we use, like AppWise, that I'm pretty fond of. Like I'm a big fan of Slack right now.
Yeah. What else do you like? Yeah.
There's
Slack with the team.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Because we were doing a lot of Google messaging, things like that, Google Talk, that kept flying in there. People were just using their text on their phones. Now we use Slack for everything. And it's a great way. You can go back and search it and throw files in it. It's pretty addicting, actually.
Yeah. So what else? So Slack. What other apps do you use?
I've got my own personal set that I'm kind of fond of, but if you haven't tried it with Gmail, Google Inbox is pretty
Google
pretty cool.
Inbox?
Yeah, Google Inbox. It's for Gmail.
I've not seen that.
Just get it, try it. It's kind of creepy because it reads all your emails and then it organizes them for you.
Really?
Yeah, so if you have like travel or something like that, it sends you these travel reminders that are coming up because it read the email confirmation that you got. So you can also do reminders in there. You can also use the OK Google function for that to do email or do different reminders for things. You can set times on them, so you can do that by voice command if you want. All those things are set up in there. So in the Gmail or the Google Inbox, you can actually switch over to nothing but reminders. And it'll just show you an entire list, and you can build tasks out of that, and then throw things in Slack if you want to. Mm-hmm. So I use those are productivity apps, but as far as the business goes, like I said, I can't say enough good things about BigCommerce. Great team over there, easy people to work with. They do have medium range platforms now, so it's not just for the small. If you have the small, that's fine. They'll get you going. You can upgrade, no problem. It's the price too is fantastic. So
Yeah. So it seems like, again, like the mail order to magazines to website, and now a lot of platforms are cropping up, like eBay, Amazon. So talk and the channels. So talk about some of the most successful channels for you and how you navigate those.
yeah, so we started off early on eBay in 2000, and they're probably still one of our strongest partners as it is. eBay's gone through a lot of changes, trying to move from the garage model to the more mainstream marketing platform to now they're trying to go into more of a discovery-based marketplace, whereas Amazon's more what we call mission-oriented. You know what you want. You're going to use Prime. There it is. I'm buying it. It's coming to my house in 2 days.
Right.
So if you have something you want to buy, Amazon's really moving more into that category.
Yeah.
eBay's moving more into discovery, where I like this kind of thing. I'm looking at it. I'm discovering new things. I'm seeing some other related items. A really nice structured data setup. They're going to have that completed by the end of the year. So some people who may have turned away from eBay because they didn't feel like they were very friendly to the sellers, they were going more for these big box guys and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You may want to revisit them and take a look again. They've really positioned themselves closer to more where they want to help the sellers. They partner with the seller. Amazon can compete with you, but eBay still wants to make sure the seller is the one that is on the platform first. They won't compete with you. We also sell with Rakuten, which is really interesting. They have a points-based, type of system to engage the consumers. So people who like to gain points do that type of thing. Rakuten has a great selection. They have a nice platform. Rakuten is kind of like the Amazon of Japan. So they're U.S. They're taking the same things they did that made them successful there in the U.S. They're here. We also do a lot with Newegg. So Newegg is more of an electronic space. But they've also branched out into home goods and other things. So if you're comfortable, if you're a tech person, something like that, you're used to using Newegg a lot.
That's what I think of when I think of Newegg, like electronics. But still, like vacuum stuff sells in Newegg.
We sell a lot of vacuums there. Yeah. So just had a big sell with them just recently. So they're really a good platform to work with. They generally have a little bit. You can get a little bit less on the fees there as well. And of course, one of the new big players is Jet.
Yeah.
So,
what are your thoughts on Jet? I just ordered stuff from Jet.
You did?
Yeah. I was playing around with it and just ordered some products on there, and I thought the checkout was pretty seamless, actually.
It is. So what's great about there is you can kind of create your own discounts, right? So the discounts are more had on the back end, and it's according to your own choices and preferences. As far as shipping goes, what you're comfortable. If you're comfortable with returns, or not, that type of thing. So you can create a little more. If you want to throw more stuff in the cart, you can get a little more off, that type of thing. So they've got a real new concept coming out. They also have this no seller fee type of thing. So automatically
really?
There's
no seller fee?
There's no seller fees. So
how's that possible?
Well, they wanted to build it off of a buying club model.
Okay.
But they've removed those fees on the front end too for now. So I'm not really sure how they're feeding themselves that well, but with all the marketing they're doing. But they're worth a look. They will vet you, so they like pre-vetted sellers right now.
Yeah.
So that's their kind of thing. But they're worth checking out.
Yeah.
They're getting some momentum right now.
Yeah.
Then you've got a lot of other players out there. These are more of those discovery-based sites that I was talking about.
Yeah.
You've got Touch of Modern, which is a site for men. A lot of cool, sharper image type products there.
Yeah.
You've got Zulily for women, which is also for kids. So if you're, their targets like the mother or the fashion-oriented person.
Right.
You've got Guilt, Rue La La, all these types of platforms you can become involved with, but they're a little harder to crack into. They're more discovery-based, like I said. So
yeah.
But there's all these different channels, Staples, Wayfair. We just got involved with Walmart.com, so Walmart has become a marketplace now, so they're ready to take on Amazon.
Is that harder to crack into, or are they wanting people to join it?
It's another vetting process. You have to be approved. So if you don't have a strong history, you're probably not going to get into Walmart.com. But they grew 65% on their e-commerce platform last year. So they had the strongest acceleration of any of the e-commerce platforms. Their sites are set squarely on Amazon. Now they'll never catch them because of the third party selling that the way that Amazon does their reporting. But on Amazon proper sales versus Walmart.com sales, Walmart is poised to overtake them. So
Really?
yeah, so they're look for them to be a strong player coming up. They've thrown a ton of resources into that platform. So they're very very serious about it.
Yeah. I'm so just impressed. Like 16, most people could probably name 3 channels or something,
Yeah.
and you're talking 16 channels. What's been the channel that surprised you the most? Like, eBay, obviously from the beginning, you sort of expected it to be bigger, and probably Amazon.
Oh yeah.
Which one surprised you?
One that's probably surprising the most is Zulily.
Hmm.
Zulily is, like I said, I heard about them like women clothing, kids wagons. We're not going to do well there, right? But what they do is this is a new thing.
Isn't Zulily start as a deal site, or is it still a deal site?
They do deals, but they're also what it would call discovery based. So you may be pulled in by a deal and then start seeing some really cool things that you like. The way that they work is they work from the outside in. So they start off by figuring out with their AI what you don't like. And so you stop seeing those things. They don't just go, if you like this, you'll probably like this. It's not like that at all. They get a taste for what a buyer profile is and then slowly start increasing their experience to a scope that they would find palatable.
Right.
So it's not just a direct product relational thing, it's a data relational thing. And so what they discovered why we sell Dyson there is because people that buy brands such as, like, say, Guess or something like that, Coach, if they're buying those kind of things, they'll start also serving them up Dysons because they found a cross-relational data there between those kind of products.
Right.
And that's what they start serving. So it's really high tech. They serve over 1 million different versions of their website a day.
Wow.
I had
Talk
no
about
idea.
split testing.
Then as far as the A/B testing goes, they have 12 different studios on their initial floor. They're shooting all day long. They've got models and stuff in there all day long trying to figure out what. When I was there this one day, they had a radio flyer. This was before Halloween. They had a radio flyer wagon, and they put pumpkins in it and autumn leaves around it for one shot. Then another one, they put a little kid in it, a toddler, with a mom looking like she's pulling it. The kid's in a costume for Halloween, right?
Right.
Then they had another one where it was like a person was setting some gardening stuff around it, like they're going to have it in the garden for garden stuff. They'll go out and they'll test it against different profiles.
Wow.
If you fit a certain profile, you'll get served
That's
a different
amazing.
look of that
Yeah.
than somebody else gets served. So
Wow. That's
their
remarkable.
conversion rates are super high. And when we started dealing with them, I did not expect us to do well there. And they're probably our number 3 platform right now.
Wow. So, Richard, do you remember one of the largest selling single days you've ever had?
Yes.
And what happened?
We had sold this was really odd. We'd actually put up a Dyson stick for the lowest price it had ever been sold for. This was on eBay Daily Deals. And I want to say we probably sold over, it was $1 million day.
Wow. Holy crap.
Man in
What's
one
a
day.
What's a Dyson stick?
Dyson is a stick vac. It's rechargeable, handheld type of deal. It's kind of small. It's lower priced. And when they first started doing refurbished in those, we had one of those. Now they're more prevalent now, but back then it was a pretty big deal. So putting it out at that price, that kind of item, we didn't really see that coming.
Wow.
And we sold everything we had. So
Was it logistically really difficult, or like how do you fulfill on your largest day?
we're really set up to move, but it took us 3 days to get through that wood. That was
That's not
was a lot of
bad.
wood to chop.
That's not bad. I mean, you didn't need to order more product or anything. You had.
I did.
you
And
did?
we couldn't get it because we thought we had like a 3-year supply, but selling everything at once like that was
You
that was
sold a
kinda
3-year supply in one day.
Well, I'm joking about the 3-year supply.
Oh, okay.
But we literally thought that was probably going to be more like a 5 to 6 month supply.
That's wild.
Yep.
So how do you replicate that?
Well, you can try, but you can't count on that. That was definitely unusual. So it's just one of those things that happens very rarely because everything has to line up just perfectly in the market and everything. So You can do stuff like that. I mean, there's guys like QVC that do things, like that and don't bat an eye. But that's a whole different kind of thing. Just to run that through eBay was pretty exciting.
Um, and so the change in retail, when we talked before, I asked, what do we have to talk about? And talk about where you see retail going and the changes.
So there's a presentation that I've done before, and I'll just
Yeah.
kind of give you the high points
Yeah.
of that.
Is it found online? Can someone find it online, or where? Because
No, this is
I
something
could link it up in the post or something. Was it ever videotaped or no?
no, this is something that I do privately for people that are in our market that we're representing or
I
what we're
gotcha.
working with. And so what it basically is that if you've
So
got
you'll get a
phone,
glimpse into the VIP talk that
that,
you
that's,
only do for big brands.
that's right. This is what
Okay.
you're going to get
All
right
right.
here. So what we see right now is that these little guys here, this right here,
Yeah.
is going to be about a third of retail as soon as 2030.
Well,
So right now, when I say a third of
if
retail,
people are listening, he held up a mobile phone. So
yes,
if they're listening to
okay,
audio
so
only.
yeah,
Yeah.
mobile phones.
Yeah.
So this is the battleground right now is mobile.
Yeah.
So everything's moving to that. That's why marketplace platforms, guys like BigCommerce, are also where you want to be,
Yeah.
rather than doing your own development, because they're already preparing for this.
Mobile
So
friendly sites.
right
Yeah.
now, we're looking at about just on eBay alone, a third of the transactions are through mobile,
Wow.
but 80% are touched by mobile. So that means at some point in the buying process, in the retail process, even offline, people are using mobile
Yeah.
for one reason or another. But the actual purchasing, about a third through eBay, is coming that way. So right now, retail, e-commerce is only about 8 to 9, some say 10%. It hit 10% of all retail. So 90% is still offline.
Yeah.
Um,
Really?
yes,
Wow.
absolutely. So even though it seems like it's so in your face, it's because you're using it, but you might still be purchasing offline.
Hmm.
There's a lot of things you have to buy offline, though.
Yeah.
But they're saying by 2030, the way it's going right now, we're looking at a third of those. So instead of 10%, it's going to be 30%.
Mm. It's a
Um,
huge
with,
increase. Yeah.
right, and with almost all of those transactions being driven by mobile,
Yeah.
almost all of them. So with that in mind, what's happening with mobile? What we're also seeing is this rise of the share, the local stuff. The things like Uber, the disruptions in the traditional models.
Yeah.
What's also happening in retail. So right now, all the major chains which have dominated retail, and I'll say there's probably about 7 to 8 major ones. We're talking, guys like Macy's, Kohl's, Walmart, Target, those guys. They've all been on a race to figure out how can they get into this mobile space and get all their products on there to keep people engaged with them
Yeah.
as opposed to somebody else.
Yeah.
And then there's what we call the pure play guys. The pure play guys are the guys like eBay, like Amazon, where they've never had a retail presence. They've never worked in a traditional retail model. They've only been online. They are light years ahead of everybody else right now. So they're already working on customer experience on a pure mobile environment. How do we do fulfillment? How do we do all this kind of stuff? So they're already there. The sellers that are doing it, the smaller sellers that have been working in those platforms are already there. So it's one thing to think if you're a small guy and you're doing like, $100,000 a year selling whatever it is you're selling, and you're like, man, how am I ever going to compete with these big guys? Well, those big guys are either going to be coming to you pretty soon, or you're going to be working in a world ahead of them because they're spending tons of money. Target's trying to figure out how to turn their stores into fulfillment centers right now because they've never done that kind of fulfillment. Walmart has worked on this third-party marketplace platform. They're light years ahead of everybody else because they want to bring other sellers in to sell for them so they can have this wide array of products they don't have to stock.
Right.
Amazon's doing all of the above and has been already.
Right.
So people are getting used to that type of experience that that Amazon's providing, that eBay's providing, that these other guys who have been pure play are providing. So what does that mean when we talk about a 360-degree view of that? Well, where retail is going, when you see something like Uber, that put the hands away from the cab companies back into the individual consumer, right?
Right.
So it's all going to be about the individual consumer. Remember I say, well, let's always go back to everybody's
The user. Yeah.
the user. What's in it for me? And what the user wants is choice. They want fast service. And the best way to supply all that's going to be a return to local. So everybody likes a local experience too. So once local companies are more web enabled, they're accessed into these things, then guys, there's no need to ship things across the country anymore. What you'll want to do is log in. This is what I want. Here's where I can buy it. Here's a competitive price. I'll get it locally. It'll be over here in a few hours, or it'll be here tomorrow, or whatever it is you want.
Right.
Or I can go pick it up,
Right.
or I can return it, or I can do this. People have larger comfort level with people that are local if they were as web enabled as Amazon and eBay and all these guys. So those big players that are pure play, while these major retailers are trying to figure out how they can get into web and mobile and do fulfillment, they're going to be a little bit even more behind when it comes time for the local guys to come into play. So local niche businesses will have an advantage. Anybody who does local types web services fulfillment, if you know how to ship out of the back of your place, you're way ahead of the game. So it's eventually coming around, and it's going to come maybe sooner than most people think, where local will be more inspired than shipping across the country. So as that gets more enabled through apps, through whatever, we're seeing it now with groceries finally. Groceries have been the toughest nut to crack. It's starting to happen now. They've started to figure it out. I actually had a solution for that because from where I came from, I was like the delivery model from pizza driving, right?
Right.
I was like, hey, here's a real simple solution. Make it so they order at night when they're home. So when they're there, and they're like, oh yeah, then we don't have to leave it on the doorstep. That's right. So imagine leaving a pizza on the doorstep during the day.
Yeah, it's got to be hot, right?
So they're overcoming the produce dilemmas, things like that, just by simple changes. Yeah, but what that's also doing is it's enabling the local farmers market guys. It's enabling the organic guys that want to sell their stuff online. So they're having an advantage now with that. So it's actually coming back around to small business. You don't have to worry so much about what you're competing with nationally. It helps to learn these things and have these things in place. Be ready for it. Be ready for mobile. Be ready for platform selling, because you're going to be on a platform at some point, and there will be a courier coming to pick up your stuff.
Yeah.
So
how do you gear up for mobile now that you know that? People don't even know that. You know that. So what do you do now to get ready for that?
Every time you pick up your phone and you use it for anything, think how do I need to be on there? So just think in that mindset, whether it's your website, like I said, if you go with a platform that's already web enabled or mobile enabled, really important. If you're still trying to build something that you're pinching all the time, you're behind.
I see.
So just think that always. If you're doing a listing on eBay, you're going, here's my listing. Have you looked at it in mobile? What does it look like in mobile? Make sure it looks good in mobile. Make sure that they're seeing your description properly. Make sure your images are lining up just right. Always work from that aspect. If you're working on a desktop, always have your mobile to cross-check it, because that's where it's going. And if you're working there, you're way ahead of the game.
So, Richard, I see how that applies directly to vacuum, right? Because you're local and people can, you're ahead of the game. What if you were to go into e-commerce today? You couldn't do vacuum parts. What would you do?
If I was just to jump into e-commerce?
Yeah, right now. You're like you know what you know, but you cannot do any. We didn't even talk about the green products at all, but the Gruene Steam. But what would you do now? No cleaning, no vacuum.
This is really simple. Knowing what I know, I wouldn't do a wired product because wired product requires a lot more customer service.
Yeah.
You have returns too because they can work, not work.
Right.
I would do smaller items that you could ship postal, that you don't have to involve UPS or FedEx with. Postal's very efficient. It's inexpensive, never any problems. So anything you can put in a 3-day priority package, that's something you want to try to sell. So it's also lightweight, so you don't have a lot of shipping costs. We still live in the free shipping kind of thing where people are having to absorb those costs.
Yeah, still costs the business
like
money.
One of the worst things you can possibly sell online. I mean, it's got a wire coming out of it. You've got issues. You have to have people that have to be walked through its use. You've got it's heavy. It's a big giant item. So there's a lot of things that go around that you have to deal with. Yeah. But smaller items, something, anything that's shippable in a 3-day envelope.
Yeah. So what would be an example? I'm sure that you have ideas every single week about. I do. So what's one you could share that you don't think you'll actually do?
My secret that I like to actually send up more than anything is vacuum parts. Boy, you think vacuums are not sexy? How about vacuum parts? But people need vacuum parts. I'm telling you, you make 40% on them. They cost nothing to ship. The return rates are very low. So I love doing those. So anything in that range. But a lot of people, I know a guy, one of the most successful guys on eBay. He's a friend of mine. Sells cell phone accessories.
Hmm.
You know, so there's a lot of different ways to do that.
Yeah.
But it's a competitive arena because a lot of stuff comes out of China there. But anything that along those lines, you can try them. It's inexpensive to try.
Yeah.
Like I said, if you can fit it in an envelope, I know a lot of successful guys that that go along those lines.
Yeah. So, Richard, I have two questions, and I know we're right at the hour, so I don't know if you have time for them or not, because I know you said that you may have to leave right at the top of the hour, so I want to respect your time. So if you have to go, I can wrap it up. If you have time for two more questions, I'd love to ask them, but completely up to you. You have to get to a meeting.
I got about 10 minutes now.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Meeting, so.
That's good. So since it's Inspired Insider, I always like to ask what's been the lowest moment business-wise and what's been the proudest moment. Because I know it's not always $1 million days type of thing.
Right.
So what's been the lowest moment? Talk about some of the tough times.
Yeah. So those are always around. The more dynamic, the larger your business gets. That could be a day-to-day thing. So
right.
Just have high and low points during the day. But I'd say there was one time where we had probably. You have somebody that you have to let go, and that's always a low point, because you get to know them, especially in a small company. You're like a family, and so there's been a couple of those where that's had to happen, for various reasons. But as far as that goes, I don't like to focus on that too much. There's as far as a high point definitely was when we moved into our new facility.
Is this the 20,000 square foot facility, or?
It's 20,000 square foot facility. Before that, it looked like we had a trailer park going behind that store. I'm telling you, we had all these small portable buildings. They were just linked together. Every year we'd add a new one, thinking that was the answer to our problems, and then we'd
What was it? Like, what's the structure look like? Is it I'm picturing like a doghouse or something. Like, what is it?
Pretty close.
Yeah.
So the store was very small up front. It was like just a regular box, that you would see with a regular storefront. But out back, we had connected. I had a carpenter connect these 10 buildings, that we had purchased really cheap. And these things would get super hot in the summertime. And then we started purchasing, truck containers, that used to fit on the backs of trucks.
And just leave them out there.
Just leave them out there. And so a truck would come in for delivery, and we had to hand take everything off and go put it in these individual little storage buildings. And for the space that we had between them, we had wooden structures built. We had the carpenter make these wooden structures. It literally looked like something out of, the Calcutta or something, where you go, don't go in that area.
Right.
This is all in the back, and we had it. And I remember thinking we were never going to be able to quite get out of there because we were so busy all the time. It's like, how are we going to move all this stuff? How are we going to do? Well, we finally found this one warehouse facility. We got it built. I'll remember not even believing we were going to do it once it was finished, and we moved everything in one weekend. We had this great plan. We logistically figured out, and we were sitting in there, and I remember just like looking around that day going like, I can't believe we're here. It was just like this big high point.
Yeah.
And this one guy came over and visited us, and he said, what's going to happen next? And I was like, what's that? He goes, well, now you're going to go broke buying merchandise because you got room for it. It's like, no, we know how to run lean. And I remember we were stretching the bank account out because, he was right. So we had all this new inventory, but just to be in a real facility, it was just such a high point.
So how long from the beginning, from 1977, what point did you move into the 20,000 square foot facility to give people an idea?
That was 2005.
Yeah.
So literally almost, so now we're working on like year 30.
Yeah. Almost 30 years, yeah.
So we've been here just a little over 10 years.
Yeah. What's the toughest part of your job?
Toughest part of my job is probably juggling my time now. So it used to be where I could get my hands dirty and work on the deals and the listings, and I actually like doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But now I'm more in the CEO type role, so I have to.
What's your day-to-day look like? Yeah. What's the day-to-day look like for you?
So my assistant schedules me, and then I generally will have like at least 3 or 4 set meetings.
Hmm.
And mornings I come in, it's emails and reports, that kind of thing,
Right.
responses. Then we'll head into whatever else has to happen for the day, so finances, that kind of thing. It's stuff you have to deal with, but
This.
my favorite thing is talk. I love talking to guys like you. I also
Yeah.
love talking to different customers. We're dealing with new customers, just getting them on board and,
Yeah.
you know, seeing what we can do for them and helping them out.
Yeah.
The other part is that I really do like still getting at a listing level and looking at things
Yeah.
and trying to figure out how we can tweak things to make
Yeah.
that experience better.
Yeah. So best part about working with your dad?
Um, the best part is getting actually to see him every day and getting to be with him because I know that a lot of people can't do that. They don't see their parents, much less get to work with them.
Yeah.
And the only downside to that is my poor mother suffers. So
Does she come in? I mean, it sounds like your
I
grandparents were in the
rarely
business at
see
some
my
point.
mother because I'm always with my dad. So the last thing on the weekend is, do I want to go see my mom? No, my dad. I don't want to see him. Yeah. But so she suffers from that. But it's a blessing to get to actually be and see your parents every day.
Yeah. So what should we leave people with? We talked about a lot of different things, very valuable things. Richard, what should we leave people with? Let's say
The
like
one
an
thing that's
e-commerce business is, looking for whatever edge or advice.
Yeah, always go at things like I said. Go from the perspective of the user. If you find out something that the user is looking for, they're wanting, or they're needing, even just a little something different from somebody else, that's a huge edge.
Yeah.
Um, just a reason for someone to click on you instead of somebody else. There's lots of ways to do it. Always keep looking for that. My own personal thing is I always tell people there's 2 things I'll say actually is
Yeah.
you will try 5 things before you find one thing that works. Keep trying things is the key.
Yeah.
Keep trying things, even if they're stupid or you think they're dumb or it's what. Just keep doing it. The other thing is that I've always found in my own personal life that I would rather have somebody besides myself tell me no. So when you hit those walls. That's fine. But sometimes we like to inside ourselves go, I don't think that's gonna. I don't think I should do that.
I
Or I
see.
don't.
So just try
So
it and
try it. So
see
you'll
what the
stop
feedback
yourself
is.
more often than anybody else will.
Yeah. What was one of those breakthroughs? You said you tried 5 things and one finally worked. Do you remember one of those?
Um, I think of
That,
one
that you
recent.
maybe almost gave up, but you're like, oh, we'll just try one more thing.
um, well, I'll tell you. Well, on a recent level, I was
Yeah.
sitting there going, everybody was kind of wanting to give up on this one platform. They're like, you don't know about Newegg, if you're trying. I was like, you know what? Let's really get behind it and just give them a shot.
Mm.
Let's give them what they're asking for. Let's move them ahead of the queue
Yeah.
and see if
Because
what
it
they're
takes
saying will
time,
work.
energy, and effort to do that, when you decide to. Yeah.
That's right.
It's a big
And so
decision.
we tried a bunch of things that hadn't worked already on an individual basis. They tried an all-in-one approach that let's try this, and this. I said, let's go for it. And boom, we had record sales with them last week. So
Wow.
that's a recent thing.
Nice.
So like I said, sometimes don't let context go either. Don't let an idea go. Sometimes things circle back around too.
Yeah.
Just because it was denied or it wasn't a good idea at that time,
Yeah.
don't trash it. Keep it in the back pocket because you never know. Situations change, the markets change, people change, management changes, everything
Yeah.
changes. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, an idea that someone wasn't receptive to, they may be receptive to it now or really wanting it. So
Yeah.
you may have just been, your instincts may have been correct at that moment, but it just wasn't the right time.
Right.
So never let those things go. Keep trying on everything. Don't be afraid of failure. Failure's always, the way I always look at that is, I go, that's just your lesson to success. So I mean,
Right. Right.
just keep hammering away at it.
Yeah. So where should we send people to check out if they want a vacuum part or some green products? We abcvacuumwarehouse.com, and then the other site is Gruene Steam, but it's spelled
Right.
GRUENESTEAM.com.
Like Gruene Steam. That's
Right.
so
Right.
it's actually green in
Yeah.
Texas. If you're here in Texas, that's we pronounce it green. So
Got it. Richard, this has been absolutely fantastic. I really appreciate your time and expertise with everything.
absolutely, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.